The sleek, iridescent starships descend upon Earth's major cities, carrying aquatic aliens ready to get wet in humanity's vast oceans. In Central Park, New York City, crowds gather as the vessels touch down, their smooth hulls reflecting the city's skyline. Uma, the benzite ambassador, emerges from the lead ship. Her blue skin glistens in the sunlight, tendrils swaying gently in the breeze. She stands before the assembled humans, her alien beauty captivating the onlookers. People of Earth, Uma's voice resonates through the park. We come seeking a new home in your bountiful waters. In exchange, we offer advanced technology beyond your imagining. The announcement sends shockwaves through the crowd. Murmurs of excitement and fear ripple through the masses. Smartphones capture every moment, broadcasting the historic event worldwide. Within hours, the United Nations convenes an emergency session. World leaders debate the benzite's proposal, their voices echoing through the chamber. Some nations eagerly support the aliens, while others voice concerns of invasion and ecological disaster. Billy Morales, a marine biologist, finds himself thrust into the center of the debate. He stands before the assembly, presenting data on screens behind him. The introduction of the benzites could destabilize our marine ecosystems, he explains, pointing to graphs and charts. Uma steps forward, her tendrils undulating. We understand your concerns, she says, her voice smooth and reassuring. Allow me to demonstrate our capabilities. She produces a vial of murky water, visibly polluted. With a wave of her hand, the water clears, becoming crystal pure. Gasps echo through the chamber. Billy's eyes widen, his scientific mind racing with possibilities. Despite his reservations, he finds himself drawn to Uma's otherworldly presence. The UN reaches a tentative agreement. The benzites may establish a trial colony in the Pacific. Billy is assigned to monitor the effects on local sea life, a task he approaches with both excitement and trepidation. As preparations begin, Uma approaches Billy. I'd like you to tour our mothership, she says, her alien eyes meeting his. Billy nods, curiosity overriding caution. Inside the ship, Billy's jaw drops. The corridors are filled with water, a living, breathing, aquatic environment. Uma explains their need for constant moisture, offering Billy a breathing apparatus to continue the tour. Hesitating for a moment, Billy dons the device. He follows Uma into the water-filled passageway, marveling at the advanced aquaculture and purification systems surrounding them. Uma demonstrates their technology, instantly cleaning a sample of polluted seawater. Billy's mind races. The potential benefits for Earth are staggering, but so are the risks of dependence on alien technology. As they swim through the ship, he struggles to reconcile his scientific caution with his growing fascination for Uma and her people. The tour concludes in Uma's private quarters. We propose a cultural exchange program, she says, her tendrils swaying in the water, to foster understanding between our species. Billy, conflicted yet intrigued, agrees to participate. As they exit the ship, reporters swarm them. Cameras flash, questions fly. Speculation about their interaction spreads like wildfire. In the days that follow, controversy erupts. Some hail Billy as a pioneer, others denounce him as an alien sympathizer. As the benzites prepare to establish their first underwater colony, tensions rise between pro-benzite factions and those calling for isolation. Billy stands at the center of the storm, caught between two worlds, as humanity faces its greatest challenge yet. As the controversy surrounding Billy's interaction with Uma intensified, the marine biologist found himself at the epicenter of a global debate. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from colleagues, journalists, and government officials, all seeking his insights on the benzite situation. One morning, as Billy stared at the ocean from his beachfront apartment, contemplating the enormity of recent events, his screen lit up with an incoming call. It was Dr. Amelia Rodriguez, the UN Secretary General's Chief of Staff. Dr. Morales, she said, her tone crisp and official, the United Nations formally requests your participation as the lead scientist in a human delegation to the benzite mothership. This will be an extended cultural exchange program. Your expertise is crucial for this mission. Billy's heart raced. He glanced at the sea, imagining the alien vessel hovering above its waters. I, I'm honored, he stammered. When do we leave? In 48 hours. A team is being assembled as we speak. 2 days later, Billy found himself boarding a sleek shuttle alongside his teammates. Dr. Sarah Chen, a brilliant marine biologist known for her work on coral ecosystems. Marcus Reeves, a seasoned diplomat with a knack for interspecies communication. And Captain John Torres, a stern-faced military liaison tasked with assessing potential security risks. As the shuttle ascended, Billy watched the curvature of the Earth emerge, a blue marble suspended in the vastness of space. The benzite mothership loomed ahead, its iridescent hull shimmering against the starry backdrop. They docked with a soft thud. The airlock hissed open, revealing Uma and a male benzite standing in the water-filled corridor. Billy's breath caught in his throat at the sight of Uma, her blue skin luminescent under the ship's lighting. "Welcome aboard," Uma said, her voice melodious even through the translation device. "This is Zax, my second-in-command. He will oversee your stay with us." Zax nodded, his tendrils swaying gently in the water. "We've prepared special breathing apparatus for you," he said, gesturing to a rack of sleek, mask-like devices. "These will allow you to breathe comfortably in our aquatic environment." As Billy donned the mask, he felt a cool mist envelop his face. He took a tentative breath, surprised by how natural it felt. With a nod to his teammates, they stepped into the water-filled passageway. The tour of the ship was nothing short of awe-inspiring. Vast chambers filled with bioluminescent plants and alien fish stretched as far as the eye could see. Benzite scientists worked at stations that seemed to defy the laws of physics, manipulating water and light in ways Billy had never imagined possible. However, as they swam deeper into the ship, Billy began to notice unsettling details. Some sections appeared to be in disrepair, with dim lighting and patches of discolored metal. In one laboratory, he observed benzite researchers frantically working on what appeared to be water purification systems. Uma caught his questioning gaze. "You're perceptive, Billy," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "Our homeworld is dying. Pollution and resource depletion have pushed our ecosystem to the brink of collapse. That's why we've come to Earth. We need a new home, and in exchange, we offer our technology to prevent your world from suffering the same fate." The revelation sent a shockwave through the human delegation. Dr. Chen immediately began questioning the benzites about their aquaculture techniques, while Captain Torres eyed their surroundings with renewed suspicion. As the days passed, Billy found himself spending more and more time with Uma. She taught him about benzite culture, their complex social structures, and their unique physiology. One evening, as they floated in a bioluminescent garden, Uma demonstrated the benzite mating ritual. Her skin began to pulse with intricate patterns of light, creating a mesmerizing display that left Billy breathless. "This is how we choose our mates," Uma explained, her eyes locked on Billy's. "The synchronization of our bioluminescent patterns signifies compatibility." Billy felt a strange flutter in his chest, a mixture of scientific fascination and something more personal. He opened his mouth to respond, but alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. "Emergency in life support!" Zax's voice echoed through the water. "Possible sabotage detected." Billy and Uma raced through the corridors, their movements fluid in the aquatic environment. They arrived at the central life support hub to find chaos. Benzite technicians frantically worked to stabilize the systems, while Zax coordinated the response. "It's a targeted attack," Zax explained grimly. "Someone is trying to shut down our oxygen reclamation units." Billy's mind raced. "Show me the schematics," he demanded. Uma quickly pulled up a holographic display of the ship's systems. Billy studied it intently, his marine biology background allowing him to grasp the alien technology's principles. "There," he pointed. "If we reroute the auxiliary power through these filtration nodes, we can bypass the damaged sections." Uma nodded, her tendrils quivering with urgency. Together, they swam to the control panel and began implementing Billy's solution. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, as if they had worked together for years. As the alarms fell silent and the ship's system stabilized, Billy and Uma shared a look of relief and something more. In that moment of crisis, a bond had formed between them that transcended species. In the aftermath of the incident, as the human delegation prepared their reports for Earth, Uma approached Billy in a quiet corner of the ship. "Billy," she said, her voice soft but filled with drive, "I need to tell you something important. In Benzite culture, we form lifelong pair bonds, and I've chosen you as my potential mate." Billy's world tilted on its axis. He stared at Uma, his mind blown with the implications of her words. As he opened his mouth to respond, a commotion erupted in the nearby communication hub. Marcus Reeves burst in, his face pale. "Billy," he said urgently, "we have a problem. News of your connection with Uma has leaked to the press. Earth is in an uproar. The UN is reconsidering your role in the negotiations." As Billy processed this information, he gazed out a viewport at the blue planet below. The Benzite trial colony was already taking shape in the Pacific, massive structures rising from the ocean depths. He realized that his next decision would impact not just his own life, but potentially the future of two species. With Uma's expectant gaze upon him and the weight of Earth's scrutiny pressing down, Billy took a deep breath, preparing to navigate the most challenging waters of his life. Career. The weight of two worlds rested on his shoulders as he faced Uma, her alien eyes filled with hope and anticipation. Before Billy could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Emergency transmission from Earth," Zax announced, his tendrils quivering with urgency. The human delegation rushed to the communication hub, where a holographic display flickered to life. The image of Dr. Amelia Rodriguez appeared, her face etched with concern. "Dr. Morales, we need you back on Earth immediately," she said, her voice crackling with static. "The situation has escalated. The Benzite trial colony in the Pacific is progressing at an unprecedented rate, and it's causing complications." Billy's mind raced as he absorbed the information. He glanced at Uma, who nodded solemnly. "Go," she said softly. "Your people need you." Within hours, Billy found himself descending through Earth's atmosphere in a shuttle, his eyes fixed on the Pacific Ocean below. As they approached the trial colony, his breath caught in his throat. Massive alien structures rose from the ocean floor, their iridescent surfaces glinting in the sunlight. It was a sight both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The shuttle touched down at a nearby naval base where a crowd had gathered. As Billy stepped onto the tarmac, he was engulfed in a cacophony of shouting voices and flashing cameras. Protesters waved signs denouncing the Benzite presence, while supporters cheered his name. "Dr. Morales, how do you respond to accusations of betraying humanity?" a reporter shouted. "Is it true you've developed romantic feelings for the alien ambassador?" another called out. Security personnel rushed to Billy's side, shepherding him through the crowd and into a waiting vehicle. As they sped away, Billy caught sight of a banner reading, "Benzites Go Home." His heart sank. At the United Nations headquarters, Billy was ushered into a packed Security Council chamber. The air was thick with tension as he took his place at the podium. Taking a deep breath, he began his presentation. "Distinguished members of the Council," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I've witnessed firsthand the incredible potential of Benzite technology. Their water purification systems could solve our global water crisis within years." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Billy displayed holographic projections of the Benzite's advanced aquaculture techniques. However, as he continued, his tone grew more cautious. "But we must also consider the ecological impact of large-scale Benzite immigration," he warned. "The introduction of an alien species to our oceans could have unforeseen consequences on our marine ecosystems." The debate that followed was fierce. Some nations pushed for immediate full-scale immigration, citing the potential benefits. Others urged caution, fear evident in their voices. As the arguments reached a fever pitch, a new voice cut through the clamor. "If I may interject," a tall, distinguished man said as he approached the podium. "Dr. Victor Stein, xenobiologist," he introduced himself. "I've been studying the biological samples provided by the Benzites, and I've made a concerning discovery." Dr. Stein's presentation sent shockwaves through the assembly. His research suggested that prolonged exposure to Benzite biology could have unforeseen consequences on Earth's ecosystems. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates argued over the implications. Amidst the uproar, Billy's phone buzzed. A message from Uma. We've arrived on Earth. Need to see you urgently. Billy slipped out of the chamber, his pupils dilating. He found Uma and a small Benzite delegation in a secure conference room, surrounded by armed guards and curious onlookers. Uma's appearance shocked him. Her skin seemed less vibrant, and her movements were slower, less fluid. "Billy," she said, her voice strained, "something's happening to me. My body, it's changing." As Uma explained the physical changes she was experiencing due to Earth's atmosphere, Billy's scientific mind raced. This development raised entirely new questions about the long-term viability of Benzite-human coexistence. Their private conversation was cut short by a commotion outside. News of the Benzite delegation's arrival had leaked, and a media frenzy was unfolding. Reporters clamored for interviews, while civilians pressed against security barriers, trying to catch a glimpse of the aliens. As Billy and Uma were rushed to a more secure location, neither noticed the small, blinking device hidden in the corner of the room. In a shadowy control center miles away, intelligence operatives watched the feeds intently, capturing every moment of the alien-human interaction. Days passed in a whirlwind of debates, interviews, and clandestine meetings. The UN, struggling to reach a consensus, announced a global referendum on Benzite immigration. As voting began, reports of increased seismic activity around the Benzite trial colony started to emerge. Billy was in the middle of a press conference when the first tremors hit. The ground shook, sending ripples through glasses of water on the podium. Panic spread through the crowd as the shaking intensified. "We need to evacuate," a security officer shouted over the din. As people rushed for the exits, Billy's phone lit up with an incoming call. It was Dr. Chen, still aboard the Benzite mothership. "Billy," her voice was urgent, "I've found something. The destruction of the Benzite homeworld. It wasn't just pollution. Their technology played a role. We need to—" Her words were cut off as another stronger tremor rocked the building. Alarms blared, and emergency lights flashed. "Tsunami warning," a robotic voice announced over the loudspeakers. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Billy's eyes met Uma's across the chaotic room. Without a word, they both knew what they had to do. They raced towards the coast, towards the epicenter of the disturbance, the Benzite trial colony. As they reached the shore, the sight before them was terrifying. Massive waves crashed against the alien structures, rising from the sea. The once smooth surfaces of the Benzite buildings were cracked and distorted. "We have to stabilize the colony," Uma shouted over the roar of the waves. "If it collapses, the tsunami will devastate the coastline." Billy nodded, his heart pounding. He knew the risks, but also understood the stakes. The fate of two species, the future of Earth itself, hung in the balance. Together they plunged into the turbulent waters, swimming towards the damaged structures. As they descended into the depths, the true scale of the crisis became apparent. The ocean floor was shifting, threatening to tear the Benzite colony apart. Billy and Uma pressed on, determined to find a solution. But as they swam deeper, the water grew darker and the current stronger. They were venturing into the unknown, facing challenges beyond anything they had encountered before. In the murky depths, surrounded by the groaning of stressed alien metal and the rumble of seismic activity, Billy and Uma searched desperately for a way to save both their peoples. The future remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. Their actions in the next few moments would shape the destiny of two worlds. As they pressed deeper into the murky depths, the water around them vibrated with increasing intensity. The alien structures groaned and creaked, their once smooth surfaces now riddled with cracks and distortions. Billy and Uma swam through a maze of twisted metal and pulsing energy conduits. Suddenly, a massive tremor shook the colony, sending a cloud of debris swirling around them. As the silt cleared, they saw the true extent of the damage. The foundations of the Benzite structures were shifting, their unfamiliar energy signatures interacting with Earth's geology in ways neither species had anticipated. Fissures in the ocean floor spewed superheated water, creating dangerous currents that threatened to tear the colony apart. Uma's tendrils quivered as she analyzed the situation. "The colony's power core is destabilizing," she shouted over the rumble of tectonic plates. "If we don't contain it, the resulting explosion could trigger a catastrophic tsunami." Billy's mind raced, drawing on his knowledge of marine ecosystems and the bits of benzite technology he'd gleaned during his time on the mothership. "We need to redirect the energy," he called back. "If we can channel it into the oceanic thermal vents, it might dissipate safely." Working in tandem, Billy and Uma swam to the colony's central hub. Uma's dexterous tendrils manipulated the alien controls, while Billy used his understanding of Earth's geology to guide her. Sweat beaded on his brow inside his helmet as they rerouted power conduits and stabilized failing systems. As they worked, the seismic activity intensified. A massive tremor rocked the structure, and a support beam came crashing down. Billy shoved Uma out of the way, the metal glancing off his shoulder. He winced in pain, but pressed on. "Almost there," Uma said, her voice strained with effort. "One more sequence, and—" The console erupted in a shower of sparks. For a heart-stopping moment, everything went dark. Then slowly, the lights flickered back to life. The rumbling subsided, and the water around them calmed. Billy and Uma shared a look of exhausted relief. They had done it. The immediate crisis was averted. As they swam back to the surface, the full scale of their challenge became clear. The benzite structures, while no longer in danger of immediate collapse, showed signs of significant stress. It was obvious that long-term solutions would be needed if the two species were to coexist on Earth. Breaking the surface, Billy and Uma were greeted by a cacophony of noise. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. Rescue boats approached, filled with anxious faces. As they were pulled aboard one of the vessels, a cheer went up from the human crew. News of their success in averting disaster had already spread. But amid the celebration, Billy could see the wary glances some cast at Uma. The divisions between human and benzite were far from healed. On shore, a crowd had gathered. Supporters waved signs praising the cooperation between species, while others held banners denouncing the alien presence. As Billy and Uma were ushered into a waiting vehicle, shouts from both sides filled the air. "You saved us all! Go back to your own planet. Humans and benzites together. Earth for Earthlings." The conflicting sentiments echoed in Billy's mind as they sped towards the United Nations headquarters. The immediate danger might have passed, but the real challenges were just beginning. Inside the UN chamber, delegates from around the world had gathered for an emergency session. As Billy and Uma took their seats, Dr. Victor Stein approached the podium, his face grave. "Distinguished colleagues," he began, "recent events have forced us to reevaluate our understanding of benzite biology. Our latest research indicates that prolonged exposure to Earth's environment is causing rapid evolutionary changes in benzite physiology." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Dr. Stein displayed holographic models showing the alterations in benzite's cellular structure. Billy glanced at Uma, noting the subtle changes in her appearance since her arrival on Earth. "While these changes could potentially allow for greater compatibility between our species," Dr. Stein continued, "they also raise concerns about unforeseen consequences for both benzites and Earth's ecosystems." As the debate raged on, Billy's phone buzzed with an urgent message. It was from Dr. Chen, still aboard the mothership. "Attack at the lab," it read. "Crucial data lost. Call me ASAP." Before Billy could process this new development, the chamber doors burst open. A group of protesters stormed in, their faces contorted with anger. "Earth for humans," they chanted, waving signs bearing the logo of a radical group calling themselves Earth First. Security personnel rushed to contain the situation, but the damage was done. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates argued and shouted over one another. Amid the tumult, a new voice cut through the noise. "Order! I demand order!" The room fell silent as General Marcus Steele strode to the podium, his uniform crisp and his expression stern. "We've seen today the danger these aliens pose to our world," he declared, his voice ringing with authority. "Their very presence threatens the stability of our planet. I call for the immediate removal of all benzite elements from Earth for the safety and sovereignty of humanity." His words were met with a mix of cheers and boos, but there was no denying the impact they had on the assembly. Billy could see the fear and uncertainty in the eyes of many delegates. As the session continued, it became clear that the tide was turning against benzite immigration. Despite Billy and Uma's heroic efforts, the risk seemed too great for many to accept. Finally, after hours of heated debate, the Security Council reached a decision. The Benzite immigration program would be temporarily suspended pending further investigation. The trial colony would need to be evacuated. As the announcement was made, Billy felt a mix of emotions. Relief at the aversion of immediate conflict, warred with disappointment at the setback to interspecies relations. He looked at Uma, seeing his own conflicted feelings mirrored in her alien eyes. They left the UN building together, stepping out into a world that seemed more uncertain than ever. As they made their way through the crowded streets, the sound of angry voices grew louder. A group of protesters had gathered, their faces twisted with rage. "Aliens out!" they shouted, pushing against police barricades. Suddenly, a bottle flew through the air, shattering at Uma's feet. Without thinking, Billy pulled her close, shielding her with his body as more objects rained down. In that moment of chaos and fear, something shifted between them. Their eyes met, and a wordless understanding passed between human and Benzite. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As security forces moved in to disperse the crowd, Billy and Uma found themselves ushered into a waiting vehicle. As they sped away from the scene, Zax's face appeared on the car's communication screen. "Billy, Uma," he said, his expression grave. "We need to talk. I have a proposal that could change everything." "Everything," Zax said, his holographic image flickering slightly. Billy and Uma exchanged glances, their recent ordeal still fresh in their minds. Before they could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. The car slowed to a crawl as a massive crowd filled the streets, their faces turned skyward. A sleek silver ship descended from the clouds, its design unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It was the Benzite command ship, carrying the High Command led by Grand Admiral Zorn. As the ship touched down in a specially prepared area near the United Nations headquarters, the crowd's reaction was a mix of awe and apprehension. Supporters waved welcoming banners, while protesters shouted slogans and brandished signs. "This changes everything," Billy murmured, his eyes fixed on the ship. Uma nodded, her tendrils quivering with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Our leaders are here. The negotiations will now truly begin." Their car finally reached its destination, and they stepped out into a maelstrom of activity. Media drones buzzed overhead, capturing every moment of the historic event. Security personnel formed a tight cordon around the landing area, keeping the surging crowd at bay. Billy watched as the Benzite High Command emerged from their ship. Grand Admiral Zorn, a towering figure with iridescent skin and piercing eyes, led the procession. His presence commanded immediate respect and attention. As the Benzite leaders made their way towards the UN building, Zax approached Billy and Uma. "I need to speak with you both," he said urgently. "There's an opportunity I think you should consider, Billy." Before Zax could elaborate, they were ushered into the UN building for an emergency meeting. The chamber was packed with world leaders, scientists, and military personnel. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the weight of the decisions about to be made. Dr. Victor Stein took the podium first, presenting his latest findings on Benzite biology. "Our research indicates that prolonged exposure to Earth's environment is causing rapid evolutionary changes in Benzite physiology," he explained, gesturing to holographic models of Benzite cellular structures. "While this could potentially allow for greater compatibility between our species, it also raises concerns about unforeseen consequences for both Benzites and Earth's ecosystems." The chamber erupted into murmurs of concern and speculation. Billy glanced at Uma, noting subtle changes in her appearance that he hadn't noticed before. Grand Admiral Zorn stepped forward next, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Distinguished leaders of Earth," he began, "we come to you not as conquerors, but as refugees. Our homeworld is now completely uninhabitable, leaving us with no choice but to seek a new home." A hush fell over the assembly as Zorn continued, "We offer to share our advanced technology with Earth in exchange for allowing large-scale Benzite immigration. Our knowledge could revolutionize your world, solving many of the challenges you face." The offer sparked intense debate among the delegates. Some saw it as an unprecedented opportunity for advancement, while others feared the implications of such a dramatic influx of aliens. As the negotiations continued, Billy felt a tap on his shoulder. It was Zax, motioning for him to step outside. In a quiet corridor, Zax made his proposal. "Billy, we want you to join a select group of humans on our mothership. Your unique understanding of both our species makes you invaluable in this time of transition." Billy's mind raced. The offer was tempting, but he knew accepting it would be controversial. He thought of his family, his colleagues, and his duty to Earth. But he also thought of Uma and the potential for true understanding between their species. Before he could respond, alarms blared throughout the building. Security personnel rushed past them, shouting orders. On nearby screens, they saw the cause of the commotion. A group of militants bearing the logo of the Earth First movement had launched an attack on the Benzite command ship. The ship's advanced defenses easily repelled the attack, but the message was clear. The threat of anti-alien extremism was very real and growing. As the chaos subsided, Billy made his decision. He would accept Zax's offer. It was a chance to bridge the gap between their species, to work towards a future where humans and Benzites could coexist peacefully. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparations and goodbyes. Billy's decision sparked controversy, with some hailing him as a visionary, while others branded him a traitor. Through it all, Uma stood by his side, her presence a constant reminder of why he had made this choice. On the day of his departure, Billy stood at the base of the shuttle that would take him to the mothership. He hugged his family tightly, fighting back tears. Dr. Chen pressed a data chip into his hand, whispering, "Continue our work. Understand their technology, their biology. It's more important now than ever." Captain Torres approached, handing Billy a small device. "Military-grade communication equipment," he explained gruffly. "Keep in touch. We need to know what's happening up there." As Billy boarded the shuttle, a commotion broke out in the crowd. Protesters clashed with supporters, their shouts filling the air. In the distance, he saw General Marcus Steele watching the scene with a calculating look. The shuttle doors closed, muffling the chaos outside. As they ascended, Billy watched Earth grow smaller beneath them. The blue-green planet, so familiar yet now somehow alien, filled him with a mix of emotions he couldn't quite name. Uma's hand found his, her touch reassuring. Together they looked ahead to the mothership growing larger in the viewport, a new chapter in their lives about to begin. As the shuttle docked with the massive Benzite mothership, Billy felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The sleek alien architecture of the vessel was unlike anything he had ever seen, its gleaming surfaces and pulsating lights a testament to the advanced technology of the Benzites. As they disembarked, Billy and Uma were greeted by a delegation of high-ranking Benzite officials. Their iridescent skin shimmered under the ship's ambient lighting, and their multifaceted eyes regarded the human with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Welcome aboard, Billy," Zax said, stepping forward. "We have much to show you." Over the next few days, Billy was given a whirlwind tour of the mothership's public areas. He marveled at the advanced propulsion systems, the sophisticated life support mechanisms, and the vast hydroponics bays that sustained the Benzite population. Every new discovery filled him with wonder, but also raised questions about the true extent of Benzite capabilities. It was during one of these tours that Billy first noticed something amiss. As they passed a heavily guarded section of the ship, he caught a glimpse of what looked like weapon systems being hastily concealed. The sight sent a chill down his spine, conflicting with the peaceful narrative the Benzites had presented. Troubled by his discovery, Billy decided to investigate further. Using the access granted to him as a special human liaison, he began to explore the restricted areas of the mothership during the ship's night cycle. The corridors were eerily quiet as he made his way through the labyrinth of alien technology. In a secluded section of the ship, Billy stumbled upon a hidden laboratory. The room was filled with tanks containing bizarre creatures, hybrids of Earth's marine life and Benzite biology. Floating in the eerie blue glow of the tanks, these genetically modified organisms pulsed and writhed, their unnatural forms a disturbing sight. As Billy examined the lab's computer terminals, trying to decipher the alien script, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "What are you doing here, Billy?" He turned to find Uma standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of concern and disappointment. The tension between them was palpable as they faced each other in the dimly lit lab. "I could ask you the same thing," Billy replied, his voice tight. "What is all this, Uma? Why are you experimenting on Earth's marine life?" Uma's tendrils quivered with emotion. "It's not what you think, Billy. Our situation is far more desperate than we've let on." Before she could explain further, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The sound of distant explosions reverberated through the hull, and the laboratory shook violently. "We're under attack!" Uma exclaimed, rushing to a nearby console. On the screen, they saw Earth fighter jets and orbital weapons platforms engaging the mothership's defenses. The Benzite ship's shields flared with each impact, holding off the assault for now. Suddenly, a stray shot breached the lab's outer wall. Water from the damaged tanks began to flood the room, and the genetically modified creatures spilled out, their mutated forms thrashing in the growing pool of water. Billy and Uma found themselves fighting side by side, struggling against the rising water and the unpredictable creatures. As they battled their way out of the lab, Billy couldn't help but be impressed by Uma's strength and agility. Despite the dire situation, he felt a growing admiration for her. They made their way through the chaos-filled corridors of the ship, heading for the control center. Along the way, Billy witnessed firsthand the true extent of Benzite technology. Force fields sprang up to seal off damaged sections, and repair drones swarmed to patch breaches in the hull. The ship's defenses easily repelled Earth's attacks, confirming Billy's suspicions about the Benzite's superior capabilities. As they neared the control center, Uma pulled Billy into a quiet alcove. Her eyes met his, filled with a mixture of fear and dedication. "Billy, there's something you need to know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Our species is facing extinction. The pollution on our homeworld caused irreversible genetic degradation. We came to Earth not just as refugees, but as a last hope for our survival." The revelation stunned Billy. Before he could respond, another explosion rocked the ship, reminding them of the urgent situation at hand. They burst into the control center to find it in chaos. Zax and other Benzite leaders were engaged in a heated debate about how to respond to Earth's attack. Some advocated for a show of force to demonstrate their superior technology, while others urged for a more diplomatic approach. Billy stepped forward, his mind racing. He realized that he was in a unique position to bridge the gap between the two species and potentially end this conflict before it escalated further. "I have a proposal," he announced, drawing the attention of the Benzite leaders. "But first, we need to open a channel to Earth. It's time for the full truth to come out." As the communications officer worked to establish a connection, Billy turned to Uma. She nodded encouragingly, her hand finding his in a gesture of support. The main screen flickered to life, showing a split view of the UN Security Council chamber and the bridge of Earth's primary military command ship. General Marcus Steele's stern face dominated one side of the screen, while world leaders filled the other. Billy took a deep breath, acutely aware that the fate of both species hung on what he was about to say. He began to speak, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "People of Earth, leaders of nations, and fellow humans," he started, "I'm broadcasting to you from the Benzite mothership to reveal the full truth about our alien visitors and to propose a path forward that could benefit both our species." As Billy continued his address, the tension in both the Benzite control center and the Earth chambers was palpable. The future of human-Benzite relations, and potentially the survival of the Benzite species, rested on the words of this one man who had come to understand both worlds. Worlds. As Billy continued his address, the tension in both the Benzite control center and the Earth chambers was palpable. The future of human-Benzite relations, and potentially the survival of the Benzite species, rested on the words of this one man who had come to understand both sides. "The Benzites face extinction," Billy said, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. "Their homeworld's pollution has caused irreversible genetic degradation. They came to Earth not just as refugees, but as a last hope for their survival." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the UN Security Council chamber. On the split screen, General Marcus Steele's face hardened, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Billy went on to detail the extent of Benzite technology, from their advanced water purification systems to their ability to rapidly adapt to new environments. As he spoke, Uma stood beside him, her presence a powerful symbol of human benzite cooperation. Their technology could revolutionize our world, Billy explained. But more importantly, we have the opportunity to save an entire species from extinction. The broadcast reached billions across Earth and every benzite on the mothership. As Billy's words sank in, a shift in public opinion began to take shape. Many humans who had been skeptical now found themselves sympathizing with the aliens' plight. However, not everyone was swayed. General Steele's voice cut through the transmission. This could be a ploy to manipulate human emotions. We can't let our guard down based on one man's word. In the background, Billy could see Ethan Drake, leader of the Earth First movement, nodding in agreement with Steele. As the broadcast concluded, the United Nations erupted into debate. World leaders argued over the implications of Billy's revelations, weighing the potential benefits against the risks of large-scale benzite immigration. On the mothership, Billy and Uma's actions sparked a division among the benzite leadership. Zax approached them, his multifaceted eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and concern. "You've taken a great risk," Zax said. "Not everyone will see your honesty as a path towards cooperation." As if to confirm his words, a group of high-ranking benzite military officers entered the control center. Their body language was tense, tendrils quivering with impossibly strong anger. "Billy and Uma," one of them announced, "Grand Admiral Zorn has ordered you to appear before a benzite tribunal. You've disclosed sensitive information without authorization." Before Billy or Uma could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A technician at a nearby console called out, "The modified creatures from the damaged laboratory are spreading through the ship's aquatic systems." Chaos erupted as benzite crew members rushed to contain the threat. Billy and Uma exchanged a glance, silently agreeing that the immediate danger took precedence over the tribunal. As they moved to assist with the crisis, a transmission from Earth caught their attention. Dr. Victor Stein's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mix of excitement and urgency. "Billy, Uma, I've analyzed the data from your broadcast," he said hurriedly. "The benzite's rapid adaptation technology, it could be the key to addressing their genetic degradation. We might not need large-scale immigration after all." Before they could fully process this information, another alert sounded. Reports flooded in of coordinated attacks on benzite installations and research facilities on Earth. The Earth First movement, led by Ethan Drake, had launched a series of strikes, further straining human benzite relations. In response to the escalating crisis, a group of moderate human leaders and benzite officials hastily convened. Their proposal, establish a joint human benzite research initiative to address the genetic problems while allowing a limited cultural exchange program. Billy and Uma found themselves thrust into the center of this initiative. Their growing personal relationship, once a private matter, now became a point of public scrutiny. Some viewed it as a conflict of interest, while others saw it as a testament to the possibility of human benzite coexistence. As they grappled with their new roles, a technician burst into the room, panic etched on his features. "The modified creatures," he gasped. "They've escaped into Earth's oceans." The news sent shockwaves through both human and benzite communities. These genetically altered beings, displaying both Earth and benzite characteristics, now posed a potential ecological disaster for the planet. Without hesitation, Billy and Uma stepped forward. "We'll lead a joint team to capture and study these creatures," Billy announced. "It's crucial for Earth's safety and for understanding the potential of combined human and benzite biology." As they prepared for the dangerous mission ahead, Billy caught Uma's eye. In that moment, despite the chaos surrounding them, he felt a deep connection to her and a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, carrying the weight of two species' futures on their shoulders. The mission loomed before them, fraught with danger and uncertainty. As Billy and Uma boarded the specially equipped submersible, they knew that the fate of human benzite relations, and perhaps the future of both species, would be determined by what they discovered in the depths of Earth's oceans. As the submersible descended into the depths off the coast of Hawaii, Billy felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The specially equipped vehicle, a marvel of benzite technology, hummed quietly as it cut through the dark waters. Uma sat beside him, her tendrils gently swaying in the confined space. The rest of their joint human benzite team occupied similar vehicles, spread out in a search pattern across the area where the modified creatures had been sighted. Sensors are picking up unusual biosignatures, Uma reported, her multifaceted eyes fixed on the holographic display. 3 o'clock, about 200 meters out. Billy adjusted their course, guiding the submersible towards the readings. As they approached, the darkness gave way to an eerie, pulsating light. A group of creatures, unlike anything Billy had ever seen, came into view. Their bodies were a disturbing fusion of Earth's marine life and benzite biology. Bioluminescent patterns rippled across their skin, creating mesmerizing displays that seemed to communicate complex information. As the team attempted to encircle them, the creatures demonstrated an uncanny intelligence, evading capture with surprising agility. "They're coordinating," Billy observed, watching as the creatures used a combination of light signals and ultrasonic waves to organize their movements. "It's like they've developed their own language." Suddenly, alarms blared inside their submersible. Uma's console erupted in a shower of sparks, filling the cabin with acrid smoke. "We've lost propulsion," Uma coughed, her tendrils writhing in distress. "The containment field is destabilizing. We need to evacuate." Without hesitation, Billy helped Uma into her emergency gear. They sealed their helmets and activated the submersible's evacuation protocol. As the hatch opened, letting in a rush of cold seawater, Billy's mind raced with the dangers they faced, not just from the pressure and temperature of the deep ocean, but from the unpredictable creatures surrounding them. They swam out into the open water, the modified creatures swirling around them in curious patterns. Billy kept a firm grip on Uma's hand, unwilling to let her drift away in the chaotic environment. To their surprise, the creatures' aggressive evasion tactics ceased. Instead, they began to circle the pair, their bioluminescent patterns shifting to softer, almost soothing rhythms. "Billy," Uma's voice crackled through the comm system, "I think our combined presence is affecting them. They seem calm." Seizing the opportunity, Billy signaled to the rest of the team. The other submersibles moved in, their containment fields at the ready. With the creatures docile, the team managed to capture several specimens without incident. Back aboard the research vessel, Billy and Uma watched as Dr. Victor Stein examined the captured creatures. The renowned scientist's face was a mixture of awe and concern as he studied the readings from his instruments. "Fascinating," Dr. Stein murmured, adjusting his glasses. "These beings are true hybrids, a perfect blend of human, benzite, and Earth marine life DNA. The implications are staggering." Uma leaned in, her tendrils quivering with interest. "What does this mean for Earth's ecosystems?" Dr. Stein's expression grew grave. "If these creatures continue to breed and evolve in the wild, the long-term effects could be profound. We're looking at a potential shift in the entire oceanic food chain, not to mention the possibility of further genetic drift as they interact with other species." As the team discussed the ramifications of their discovery, Billy's communicator buzzed. The message he received sent a chill down his spine. General Marcus Steele had ordered covert surveillance of all benzite activities on Earth, and the information had been leaked to the press. "This is bad," Billy said, showing the message to Uma and Dr. Stein. "Public opinion was just starting to turn in favor of cooperation. This could undo everything we've worked for." Their concerns were justified. Within hours, reports came in of a massive protest organized by Ethan Drake and his Earth First movement outside the United Nations headquarters. The situation quickly spiraled out of control as a group of extremists attempted to breach the building. In response to the escalating crisis, the United Nations Security Council called an emergency session. Billy and Uma found themselves nominated to co-chair a newly proposed Human Benzite Oversight Committee, tasked with monitoring all interactions and research between the two species. As they prepared for their new roles, Billy and Uma retreated to a quiet corner of the research vessel. The weight of recent events hung heavy between them. "I never imagined we'd find ourselves in this position," Billy said, running a hand through his hair. Uma's tendrils reached out, gently brushing his arm. We've come so far, Billy. Despite everything, I believe we can make a difference. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the tension that had been building between them finally broke. They leaned in towards each other, their lips meeting in a kiss that bridged the gap between their two species. Their intimate moment was interrupted by an urgent call from the lab. Dr. Stein's excited voice came through the speaker. "Billy, Uma, you need to see this immediately. I've made a breakthrough with the benzite rapid adaptation technology." They rushed to the lab where Dr. Stein was poring over a complex series of holographic models. "I believe we can modify this technology to address the genetic degradation affecting the benzite species," he explained, his eyes shining with excitement. "This could eliminate the need for large-scale immigration to Earth." As the implications of this discovery sank in, Billy and Uma exchanged a look of hope, tinged with apprehension. They knew that implementing this solution would require careful diplomacy and cooperation from both humans and benzites. News of the potential breakthrough spread quickly, eliciting mixed reactions. While many saw it as a path to peaceful coexistence, others viewed it with suspicion. Grand Admiral Zorn's voice boomed through a secure channel, expressing concern that this development could weaken the benzites' position in negotiations with Earth. Undeterred, Billy and Uma began preparing for the crucial meetings with both the United Nations and the Benzite High Command. As they stood together, ready to face the challenges ahead, they knew that their personal relationship added an extra layer of complexity to their already difficult task. The future of human-benzite relations hung in the balance as they stepped forward, united in their persistence to bridge the gap between two worlds. As they stepped out of the research vessel, a message flashed on Billy's communicator. He quickly scanned the contents, his expression shifting from anticipation to concern. "Uma, we need to postpone our presentation," he said urgently. "Dr. Stein just sent an alert. The modified creatures in the oceans, they're reproducing at an alarming rate." Uma's tendrils quivered with worry. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough to threaten marine ecosystems worldwide," Billy replied, already tapping out a response. "We need to act fast." Within hours, Billy and Uma had mobilized a joint human-benzite task force. They commandeered a large research vessel in the Pacific Ocean, transforming it into a command center for their urgent mission. The ship's deck buzzed with activity as humans and benzites worked side by side, setting up equipment and analyzing data. Despite the shared goal, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Human crew members, their minds clouded by General Marcus Steele's recent propaganda, cast wary glances at their benzite counterparts. Likewise, several benzites, still loyal to Grand Admiral Zorn, kept their distance from the humans, their tendrils twitching with barely concealed suspicion. Billy and Uma found themselves constantly mediating between the two groups, their unique position as a human-benzite pair proving invaluable. They moved from station to station, offering encouragement and fostering cooperation wherever possible. As night fell, the command center erupted into chaos. A technician's voice cut through the air. "Massive swarm detected, heading towards San Francisco Bay at an alarming speed." Billy and Uma exchanged a glance, knowing they had to act fast. They gathered their team around the holographic display, its blue light illuminating their determined faces. "We need to redirect the swarm," Billy announced. "I propose we modify our sonar systems to emit frequencies that repel the creatures." Uma nodded, her tendrils swaying thoughtfully. "Good idea. We can also deploy our force field technology to create underwater barriers." As the team sprang into action, Billy and Uma found themselves working in close proximity. In the cramped control room, their bodies often brushed against each other as they moved between consoles and adjusted equipment. Each accidental touch sent a jolt of awareness through them, the physical tension mirroring the urgency of their mission. Hours ticked by as they implemented their plan. The modified sonar systems hummed to life, sending out carefully calibrated frequencies. Benzite engineers, under Uma's guidance, activated a network of underwater force fields, creating a maze-like barrier to funnel the swarm away from the coast. Initially, their efforts seemed successful. The swarm's trajectory shifted, veering away from San Francisco. A collective sigh of relief swept through the command center. However, their respite was short-lived. "Ocean currents shifting," a human oceanographer called out. The swarm is being pushed back towards land. Billy's mind raced, searching for a solution. His eyes locked with Uma's, and an idea sparked. What if we use your rapid adaptation technology? We could evolve a local fish species into a predator for these creatures. Uma's tendrils writhed with uncertainty. It's risky, Billy. The ecological impact could be severe. I know, Billy said softly, moving closer to her. But it might be our only option. After a moment of tense silence, Uma nodded. Let's do it. They quickly prepared for a dive, donning specialized suits that allowed them to work underwater. As they descended into the dark waters, Billy and Uma found themselves tethered together, sharing equipment and oxygen. The constant contact heightened their awareness of each other, even as they focused on their crucial task. Working swiftly, they applied the modified rapid adaptation technology to a school of local fish. The effect was almost immediate. The newly evolved predators darted towards the approaching swarm, their enhanced abilities making them formidable opponents for the genetically modified creatures. Billy and Uma watched in awe as the predator fish drove back the swarm, averting the immediate crisis. As they ascended to the surface, exhaustion and exhilaration coursed through them in equal measure. Back on the deck of the research vessel, they were met with a mix of cheers and concerned murmurs. While many celebrated their innovative solution, others voiced worries about the long-term consequences of their actions. Amidst the commotion, Billy and Uma found a quiet moment on a secluded part of the deck. The adrenaline of their shared ordeal still coursed through them, breaking down the last of their hesitations. They came together in a passionate embrace, their physical attraction finally overcoming the barriers between their species. Their moment of intimacy was cut short by the sharp ping of an incoming transmission. Billy reluctantly pulled away, checking the message on his communicator. His expression grew serious as he read, "The UN Security Council has called for an immediate vote on human-benzite relations," he informed Uma, his voice tight with tension. "They want us back in New York right away." Uma's tendrils curled with concern. This vote could determine everything, whether we can stay on Earth or if you'll be asked to leave entirely, Billy finished, his hand finding hers. As they prepared to board the high-speed transport back to New York, the weight of their situation settled upon them. They would have to navigate not only the complex political landscape, but also the implications of their now undeniable relationship. The transport hummed to life, its engines powering up for the journey ahead. Billy and Uma took their seats, their hands still intertwined. As the vessel lifted off, carrying them towards an uncertain future, they knew that the fate of both their species and their own future together hung in the balance. Balance. As the transport touched down in New York, Billy and Uma steeled themselves for the challenges ahead. The scene that greeted them as they stepped off the aircraft was one of utter chaos. The streets surrounding the United Nations headquarters were packed with a seething mass of humanity. On one side, pro-benzite supporters waved signs adorned with slogans of unity and cooperation. Opposite them, an equally vocal anti-alien faction chanted xenophobic slogans and brandished effigies of benzites. Billy instinctively moved closer to Uma, his hand brushing against hers. "Stay close," he murmured, scanning the crowd for potential threats. Uma's tendrils quivered with a mix of anxiety and purpose. "I've never seen such intensity," she said, her voice barely audible above the din. Before they could take another step, a group of heavily armed security personnel surrounded them. "Mr. Parker, Miss Uma," a stern-faced woman in a dark suit addressed them. "We're here to escort you inside. Please follow us closely." The security team formed a tight perimeter around Billy and Uma, shielding them from the press of bodies and the occasional projectile thrown from the crowd. As they approached the UN building, the roar of the protesters grew deafening. Billy felt Uma's hand slip into his, her grip tightening as they navigated the gauntlet of shouting voices and flashing cameras. Once inside, the cacophony of the streets gave way to a tense quiet. World leaders and diplomats hurried through the halls, their faces etched with concern. Billy and Uma were quickly ushered into the General Assembly Hall, where rows of expectant faces turned to watch their entrance. As they took their places at the podium, Billy felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. He glanced at Uma, who gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, he began their presentation. Distinguished delegates, Billy's voice rang out across the hall. We stand before you today with a potential solution to the genetic degradation affecting the benzite species. For the next hour, Billy and Uma took turns explaining their findings on the modified rapid adaptation technology. They outlined its potential to eliminate the need for large-scale benzite immigration to Earth, while also touching on the recent crisis with the genetically modified sea creatures. As they spoke, Billy observed the reactions of the assembled leaders. Some leaned forward, their eyes alight with interest and hope. Others sat back, arms crossed, their expressions skeptical or outright hostile. When they finished, a murmur rippled through the assembly. The Secretary General stood, her face grave. Thank you, Mr. Parker and Ms. Uma. We will now take a brief recess to consider this information before proceeding to the vote. As the delegates filed out of the hall, an aide approached Billy and Uma. If you'll follow me, we've prepared a private room where you can wait. The room was small but comfortable, with a view overlooking the East River. As the door closed behind them, Billy and Uma found themselves alone for the first time since their arrival in New York. The tension that had been building between them since their underwater mission suddenly felt palpable. Uma moved closer to Billy, her tendrils gently brushing his arm. Whatever happens, she said softly, I want you to know. Her words were cut off as Billy pulled her into a fierce embrace. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, years of pent-up emotion pouring out in a single moment. Uma's tendrils wrapped around Billy's neck, drawing him closer as they lost themselves in each other. The sharp knock at the door startled them apart. The aide's voice came through, urgent and slightly breathless. Mr. Parker, Ms. Uma, you're needed back in the assembly hall immediately. There's been a development. Exchanging a look of concern, Billy and Uma quickly composed themselves and hurried back to the General Assembly. As they entered, they were struck by the atmosphere of hardly restrained panic. The Secretary General's voice cut through the chaos. We've just received reports of massive underwater seismic activity near the benzite trial colony in the Pacific. The activity is of sufficient magnitude to potentially trigger devastating tsunamis across the Pacific Rim. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the hall, showing a map of the Pacific Ocean. Red markers indicated the epicenters of the seismic activity, pulsing ominously. Billy's mind raced, connecting the dots. He leaned in close to Uma, whispering urgently, the creatures we encountered earlier, could they be causing this? Uma's tendrils writhed in agitation. It's possible. If they've burrowed deep enough into the ocean floor, they could be destabilizing the tectonic plates. Billy stepped forward, addressing the assembly. Madam Secretary General, we believe we know the cause of this seismic activity. The genetically modified sea creatures we encountered earlier may have evolved further, burrowing into the ocean floor and disrupting the tectonic plates. His words sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the hall. General Marcus Steele, his face flushed with impossibly strong anger, stood up. This is precisely why we can't trust these alien influences on our planet. I propose an immediate military strike to neutralize these creatures before they cause any more damage. Grand Admiral Zorn's holographic image flickered to life, his tentacles waving in agitation. Such reckless action could cause even more harm. The Benzite High Command offers our most advanced containment technology to address this threat without risking further destabilization. As the debate heated up, Billy felt a moment of clarity. He turned to Uma, saw the same realization in her eyes, and knew what they had to do. He raised his voice, cutting through the arguments. We have a proposal, Billy announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. A joint human benzite mission, combining the best of both our technologies and expertise. Uma stepped forward, her tendrils swaying with conviction. We suggest using benzite force field technology in conjunction with human deep-sea drilling equipment. This combination would allow us to isolate and neutralize the creatures without risking further tectonic disturbances. Billy nodded, building on her idea. Furthermore, we can use the benzite rapid adaptation technology to speed up the process, allowing us to work more efficiently in the deep-sea environment. The hall fell silent as the delegates considered their proposal. The Secretary General looked from Billy to Uma, then to the holographic displays showing the escalating seismic activity. Given the imminent threat, she said slowly, the Security Council will put this proposal to an immediate vote. The next few minutes were tense as the votes were cast and tallied. Finally, the Secretary General spoke again. The proposal has been approved. Mr. Parker, Ms. Uma, you will lead this operation. Assemble your team immediately and prepare for departure to the Pacific. As they hurried out of the hall to begin preparations, Billy and Uma exchanged a look of drive, tinged with apprehension. They both knew the enormity of the task ahead and the potential consequences of failure. Within hours, they were aboard a specially equipped submarine, descending into the inky depths of the Pacific Ocean. The vessel was cramped, filled with a mix of human and benzite experts, all working feverishly to prepare for the mission ahead. Billy and Uma found themselves constantly in close proximity, their bodies brushing against each other as they moved through the narrow confines of the submarine. Each accidental touch sent a jolt of awareness through them, a reminder of their interrupted moment in New York. As they approached the ocean floor, the submarine's sensors began to pick up the full extent of the situation. The creatures had formed a vast, interconnected network spanning hundreds of miles across the seabed. Uma's tendrils writhed in agitation as she studied the readings. "This is far worse than we anticipated," she said, her voice tight with concern. "Our original plan may not be sufficient to address a problem of this scale." Billy ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing to find a solution. Suddenly, Uma's tendrils stiffened, a sign Billy had come to recognize as a moment of inspiration. "What if," she said slowly, her eyes meeting Billy's, "we use the rapid adaptation technology on ourselves?" Billy's eyebrows shot up. "You mean evolve ourselves to better operate in this environment?" Uma nodded, her tendrils swaying with excitement and trepidation. "It's risky, but it might be our only chance to succeed." Billy considered the idea, weighing the potential benefits against the unknown risks. Finally, he nodded. "You're right. It's our best shot." As the rest of the team prepared the adaptation chamber, Billy and Uma found a moment of privacy in a small storage compartment. The air between them was charged with tension, both from the gravity of their mission and the untenacity feelings between them. Uma's tendrils gently caressed Billy's face. "Billy," she said softly, "before we do this, I need you to know." Billy pulled her close, cutting off her words with a deep, passionate kiss. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I know," he whispered. "Me too." Hand in hand, they walked to the adaptation chamber. As the door sealed behind them and the process began, Billy and Uma held each other tightly, ready to face whatever changes awaited them in their quest to save both their species and the planet. Maba's planet. As the process began, Billy and Uma felt a tingling sensation spreading through their bodies. The air in the chamber grew thick with a swirling mist, obscuring their vision. Billy tightened his grip on Uma's hand, anchoring himself to her as the transformation took hold. Moments later, the chamber door hissed open, releasing a cloud of vapor. Billy and Uma stumbled out, their legs unsteady as they adjusted to their new forms. Billy blinked rapidly, his eyes adapting to the dim light of the submarine. He looked down at his hands, now webbed and slightly translucent. A soft blue glow emanated from his skin, pulsing gently in rhythm with his heartbeat. Uma gasped softly beside him, her tendrils swaying with a newfound grace. Her skin shimmered with a similar bioluminescence, but in shades of green and purple. "Billy," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "Look at us." Billy met her gaze, struck by the intensity of her eyes, now large and dark, perfectly suited for the depths they were about to explore. He felt a surge of connection to her, stronger than ever before. "We need to move," the captain's voice cut through their moment of wonder. "The seismic activity is increasing." Nodding, Billy and Uma made their way to the airlock. As the water rushed in, Billy felt a moment of panic, but his body instinctively adapted. Gills fluttered open along his ribcage, and he found himself breathing easily in the cold, dark water. They swam out into the open ocean, their new webbed appendages propelling them with incredible speed and agility. Billy marveled at the clarity of his vision in the murky depths, Schools of bioluminescent fish darted around them, their lights pulsing in patterns that Billy could now somehow understand. Uma's voice resonated in his mind, a new form of communication made possible by their adaptations. The creature network is just ahead. Can you sense it? Billy focused, and suddenly he could feel the vibrations in the water, a complex web of movement and energy spreading out before them. Yes, he replied, his thoughts projecting clearly to Uma. It's massive. As they approached the network, the true scale of the situation became apparent. Massive, eel-like creatures writhed and twisted, their bodies intertwined in a living lattice that stretched as far as the eye could see. Smaller organisms darted between the larger ones, carrying information and resources throughout the network. Uma's tendrils stiffened in alarm. They're aware of us, she warned. The entire network is reacting to our presence. No sooner had she spoken than a group of creatures broke away from the main mass, streamlining towards them with frightening speed. Billy and Uma split apart, narrowly avoiding the first attack. They regrouped quickly, their movements perfectly synchronized as they faced the oncoming threat. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Billy and Uma weaved through the water, using their newfound agility to dodge attacks and counter with precise strikes. Their bioluminescent skin flashed in complex patterns, allowing them to communicate strategies without words. As they fought, Billy became acutely aware of Uma's presence beside him. Every brush of her skin against his sent a jolt of electricity through his body. Their shared movements felt like an intimate dance, their bodies moving in perfect harmony. Suddenly, one of the creatures slipped past Billy's guard, its barbed tail lashing out towards Uma. Billy shouted a warning, but it was too late. The creature's tail raked across Uma's side, leaving a trail of glowing blood in the water. Billy's world narrowed to a pinpoint. He lashed out with a fury he didn't know he possessed, driving back the attacking creatures. In moments, he was at Uma's side, cradling her in his arms. "I'm fine," Uma insisted, but Billy could see the pain in her eyes. He placed his hand over her wound, his bioluminescence intensifying as he focused on assessing the damage. "It's not deep," he said, relief evident in his voice. "But you need to rest." Uma shook her head, her tendrils waving with drive. "There's no time. We have to reach the central node." Billy knew she was right, but the thought of leaving her vulnerable tore at him. "I'll go," he said. "You guide me from here." Uma started to protest, but another tremor shook the ocean floor, emphasizing the urgency of their mission. She nodded reluctantly. "Be careful," she said, her thoughts carrying a wealth of emotion. Billy swam towards the heart of the network, following Uma's mental directions. The creatures seemed to sense his purpose, their attacks growing more frenzied as he neared the central node. He pushed through, his enhanced body operating at its limits. Finally, he reached the core of the network. The central node pulsed with energy, its tendrils deeply embedded in the ocean floor. Billy's heart sank as he realized the complexity of the structure. Their original plan would never work without risking a catastrophic seismic event. As he hovered there, surrounded by the living network, a new idea began to form in his mind. He reached out to Uma, sharing his thoughts. "We can use the adaptation technology," he explained, "not to destroy the network, but to change it." Uma's mind touched his, considering the idea. "It's risky," she said, "but it might be our only chance." With Uma's guidance, Billy began to modify the adaptation device. His hands moved with precision, adjusting the complex benzite technology. As he worked, he felt Uma's presence grow stronger, her consciousness merging with his as she lent her expertise to the task. Finally, the device was ready. Billy took a deep breath, knowing that the next few moments would determine the fate of two worlds. He activated the device, and a wave of energy pulsed out from his position, engulfing the entire creature network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly the creatures began to change. Their forms shifted and morphed, becoming more streamlined, less aggressive. The network began to dissolve, individual creatures breaking free and swimming off into the open ocean. Billy watched in awe as the newly evolved species dispersed, no longer a threat to the tectonic stability of the region. He felt a profound sense of relief, tinged with wonder at the new life they had helped create. As the last of the creatures swam away, Billy suddenly became aware of a tingling sensation throughout his body. The adaptations were wearing off. He turned and began to swim back towards Uma and the submarine, his movements becoming less fluid with each passing moment. Uma met him halfway, her own body reverting to its original form. They clung to each other as they made their way back to the submarine, their enhanced senses fading, but the connection between them stronger than ever. As they entered the airlock and the water drained away, Billy and Uma found themselves pressed close together in the small space. The adrenaline of the mission, combined with the intensity of their shared experience, overwhelmed them. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, their still glowing skin creating a dazzling light show in the darkness. The sound of the inner airlock door opening broke them apart. They stepped into the submarine, aware of the curious and awed gazes of their team members. As the vessel began its ascent to the surface, Billy and Uma stood side by side, their hands intertwined. They had succeeded in their mission, but they both knew that their actions would have far-reaching consequences. The creation of a new species, the intimate nature of their cooperation, all of this would impact the ongoing negotiations between humans and benzites. As the submarine broke the surface of the ocean, Billy and Uma prepared themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. They would face whatever came next together, their bond forged in the depths of the ocean and strengthened by their shared mission. The world above awaited their report, and with it the potential for a new era of human-benzite relations. As the submarine broke the surface, Billy and Uma squinted against the bright sunlight. The world above seemed unchanged, yet they knew everything had shifted. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "We've received an urgent message. Your presence is requested at the United Nations Assembly in New York immediately." Billy and Uma exchanged glances, their hands still intertwined. They had expected debriefing, but not on this scale. As they prepared to disembark, they noticed their skins still held a faint glow, a reminder of their incredible journey. The next few hours passed in a blur of helicopters and secure transports. Before they knew it, Billy and Uma stood before the imposing facade of the UN headquarters in New York. As they walked through the corridors, they felt the weight of countless eyes upon them. Humans and benzites alike watched with a mixture of curiosity and awe, whispering as they passed. The General Assembly Hall fell silent as Billy and Uma entered. They made their way to the podium, acutely aware of the diversity of the audience before them. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat alongside benzite diplomats, all waiting with nervous excitement. Uma's tendrils quivered slightly as she began to speak, her voice clear and strong. "Distinguished delegates, we stand before you today with news that will change the course of both our species." Billy picked up where she left off, describing their harrowing journey to the ocean floor and the discovery of the vast creature network. As they recounted their decision to use the adaptation technology to evolve the creatures rather than destroy them, a murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. "The new species we've created," Uma explained, her tendrils swaying with enthusiasm, "represents not just a solution to Earth's seismic instability, but a potential boon for benzite genetic research." Their words were met with a cacophony of voices as delegates began to debate amongst themselves. The session stretched on for hours as questions were asked, concerns raised, and possibilities explored. Billy and Uma stood firm, answering each query with patience and clarity. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the assembly hall windows, the Security Council called for a vote. The tension in the room was palpable as each member cast their ballot. Finally, the results were announced. The United Nations Security Council has voted in favor of allowing limited benzite immigration to Earth, the Secretary General declared, his voice echoing through the hall. In exchange, benzites will assist in the management and study of the newly created ocean species. The announcement was met with a mixture of cheers and cautious applause. Billy felt Uma's hand tighten around his, her tendrils swaying with emotion. They had done it. They had opened the door to a new era of cooperation between their species. In the days that followed, Billy and Uma found themselves thrust into the spotlight. They became the faces of human benzite collaboration, their images splashed across news outlets worldwide. They worked tirelessly, attending meetings, giving interviews, and helping to establish the framework for this new partnership. One crisp autumn morning, they stood on the deck of a ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Before them, construction crews swarmed over the beginnings of a massive floating structure. "Aquapolis," Uma said, her voice filled with wonder. "I never imagined I'd see anything like this." Billy smiled, watching as human and benzite workers moved in perfect harmony, piecing together the shared habitat. "It's more than just a city," he said. "It's a symbol of what we can achieve together." As weeks turned into months, Aquapolis took shape. Gleaming towers rose from the waves, their architecture a blend of human and benzite design. Beneath the surface, vast networks of laboratories and living quarters stretched out, providing a home for both species. Billy and Uma spent countless hours overseeing the city's development, working side by side to ensure every detail was perfect. Their days were long and often challenging, but they found strength in each other. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck, watching the sun sink below the horizon, Billy felt a surge of emotion. The fading light played across Uma's features, her bioluminescence glowing softly in the twilight. He realized in that moment that he never wanted to be apart from her. Turning to face her, Billy took Uma's hands in his. "Uma," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "these past months have been the most incredible of my life. I can't imagine facing the future without you by my side." He sank to one knee, producing a small box from his pocket. "Will you marry me?" Uma's tendrils quivered with joy as she pulled Billy to his feet. "Yes," she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. 1,000 times, yes." As they embraced, their bioluminescence synchronized, creating a dazzling display of light that rippled across their skin. It was a beautiful reminder of the journey that had brought them together, and a promise of the adventures yet to come. News of their engagement spread quickly, capturing the imagination of both humans and benzites. Their love story became a symbol of hope, a tangible representation of the bonds forming between their species. As they began to plan their wedding, Billy and Uma knew that their union would be more than just a personal celebration. It would be a milestone in the history of both their worlds.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.